Hey Matt, lovely to see you, and thank you so much for agreeing to share your journey on the high performance program.
No
So,
problem.
can you tell us about yourself and specifically what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my day job, I'm a head teacher of a secondary school in Staffordshire Moorlands, Westwood College. So we're a high school and a three school system. So we have years 9 to 11 and also a sixth form here. So my main role is day to day as head teacher. I'm also chair of a governors for my daughter's school and two schools within the trust which they operate. Um, and I'm also, I guess, as part of my role, as I always say, as part of my role in my continuing professional development, then I'm currently completing the MPQEL, which is the executive leadership qualification.
Fantastic. And, gosh, you've got so much going on. You're massively involved in the community, as you can see. And how many students do you have at Westwood?
Yeah, so around about 800, so around about 600 in lower school, and around about 200 in the sixth form. And we are, I guess, in the sense of where we're situated, there are two schools in the town, and we're the larger of the two schools. Um, but we are oversubscribed. We are certainly a school that places a lot of emphasis on a broad curriculum, and that's been part of the history of the school for a long time, and something that we're looking to sustain. And we're very lucky in one sense in that we have staff who've been here a long time. They're very committed to Westwood, subject specialists, experts in their field. Um, and I guess our work is constantly about trying to secure naturally the best academic outcomes for students, but really we want to emphasise that hand in hand with that for us is the wider cultural experiences for students, and for us that is on a level playing field with their academic outcomes. So, and that's in some ways easy for me because I usually try and say yes, and I try and be a facilitator to any suggestions or proposals that come through, but naturally striking that balance between what the headlines often are for school performance versus what we, I guess, produce in terms of young people. That's the key thing to it often.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're doing with the young people is incredible, and it has absolutely been inspiring to work with you over the last 12 weeks and to hear, the passion that you have, for the students in the school. It's been incredible. So, what led you to sign up for my high performance coaching program?
I think two things really. I mean, from one point of view, certainly part of it was myself interested in, I think, developing and or growing a positive performance related mindset, and being able to work with yourself, Liz, certainly supported that in our sort of first meetings together, and then that led me naturally really to the high performance coaching, and I think partly I've had some experience of coaching over the years working in education, going back 10 years or more really, to a piece of work that took place in the school I was working for at the time, where I did some coaching training and then led some of the middle leaders in sort of coaching conversations, and sort of embedding that across the school, and always had in my mind about the potential positive impact that coaching can have, but not really had the opportunity to look into it in any more detail since then. And so when the opportunity arose to work with yourself, Liz, on that high performance coaching, and it's something I was interested in.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've worked for 12 weeks, and each week we went through a particular module framework over those 12 weeks. So, out of the framework in the program, which were you particularly drawn to?
I think there's two for me. I think really the um, two primarily. Though I guess I'd say first overall, the program itself, the fact that it's relatively condensed in that really 3 months, 12 weeks, and you have a weekly slot, and that helped with me with whereas other training, something that I'm doing now, can be more disparate, more spread over a longer period of time, and you sort of dip into it, come back out again, and get on with the day to day. With the high performance coaching, it certainly felt like it was 12 weeks. It wasn't 12 individual sessions. It was 12 weeks of having the sessions, doing the follow up, well, the pre thinking, the pre reading at times, and then the follow up sort of reflection. Then it felt like one big process really. But several of them, I found all of them interesting. But I guess the two that stood out for me, one was was the session on productivity, and we talked a lot about I think it was the action indicator assessment, where we looked at how those different measures, those different ratings, and how you could consider then alongside that the level of influence, which was a different session. But for me, the two sort of sync together quite well. And I think it's those two, so the productivity and the influence sessions, which I think more than anything allowed me, which is an important part of the program for me, my own development, thinking about and reflecting on my day-to-day practice, my day-to-day impact, the influence I have. And I think certainly in my role, it's such a busy role, certainly in term time, that there isn't as much chance as I'd like there to be for reflection and for considering the level of influence I have, for example, or just how productive I am. And I think that certainly helped with my thinking regarding both my current post and what's to come in the future. I think particularly the influence session, allowing me to consider really what I do, what I've done, and how that could take me forward, really.
Amazing. And so two key areas there, productivity, and you touched on the workbooks that you get on the back of the sessions as well. And within those workbooks, the assessment indicator was in there. We did actually do that in one of your sessions, didn't we? And I remember the
Yes.
project that you were looking at, and it was
Yeah.
brilliant to see actually how, what's the success rate of this project and where are the areas you need to perhaps focus a little bit more on. And then we talked about the influencing, because I know obviously you're a big advocate. You said about empowerment and employee engagement, I know is really close to you. So that influencing framework sounds that it just, was exactly aligned to what you were working towards.
Yeah.
Okay, and thinking about that then, so what specific actions did you take on the back of those two sections then, on the productivity and the influencing?
I think from a productivity point of view, it allowed me to, I think, consider the word I mentioned earlier on, the sort of efficiencies of what can be, certainly in my role, where we work in a sort of high stakes, high pressure environment, really, and I have a finite number of staff who are fantastic, but at the same time, they're only human, and there's only so much capacity they have. Um, and that can lead me at times, I'm sure other leaders too, to take on more myself, really, in terms of like, well, okay, that's coming along, that probably fits in their domain, but I know how busy they are, and therefore, and I think the productivity session really allowed me to think about how ineffective that can be and inefficient that can be, that it's not really something for me to do, and in fact how that can be quite disempowering to others by me necessarily taking on something that probably sits better somewhere else. And I think it really allowed me to recognize that, in fact, how I spend my time, and how I direct others and support them and coach them, and hold them to account too. But that really, I think, really helped with that balance for me, and looking at how I plan my time, looking at how I delegate, and also hold to account, as I've mentioned. I think in terms of the influence, then that's, I think, probably the bigger impact there isn't necessarily with my role here, although it certainly helped with that. It helped me to reflect on how what I do in my day to day and in the sort of longer term planning, the strategic thinking, and the influence that I have. But it helped me probably more than thinking about my next steps, whatever they might be. It's certainly, I can say this for myself, that how I approach my role as head teacher is, if I'm honest, pretty much fully absorbing and all encompassing, or it certainly can be. And that's how I like it to a large extent, but it doesn't necessarily allow you to sort of get your head up and have a look around and think about what might be coming next. And the influence work that we did definitely helped me to think about the different things that I've done, the different boxes I've ticked, or the different experiences I've had, and how that does put me in a position to move on to different roles, or a different sector even, or other options too. And I think that was particularly valuable for me during the 12 weeks.
So how would you describe your experience of us working together?
Yeah, great. In terms of that, I think what's essential in for this to work really is a coach or a mentor or Liz in this case, who I think is both strikes that balance between being someone that you feel, or I certainly have felt, being very happy talking to, being absolutely confident in being able to talk about things which are, in other terms, confidential, I suppose, in terms of anything related to work in that sense, being absolutely secure in the sense of that this is a forum for us and that that's something that we can talk about and reflect on. I think the balance there between that and that absolute confidence in that, and I guess not opposite to that, but with that, Liz's experience, Liz's insight, Liz's, I guess, finger on the pulse in terms of the coaching world and the different strategies that can be utilised in different roles. And I'm very conscious that Liz works with all sorts of different industries, but I've certainly felt from an education point of view the fact that she's done, as I understand it, quite a lot of work with school leaders at different levels and certainly head teachers, then that certainly enabled her to have some insight. So when I was talking in some of the school jargon, that Liz wasn't too often flummoxed by it really. But I guess that probably the main thing for me is that sense of how supportive, how encouraging Liz is through the sessions, and doesn't allow you to, I guess, come off topic and lament the fact that you've got no money in schools or staff absence, COVID, whatever it might be. It's that focus on, okay, but what can we do and how will this work and how can this help with that and that. So I think for me, yeah, and I think that I like to be quite open and honest, and I need to have that confidence in that person I'm speaking to that that's going to be reciprocated, and that's certainly been the case with Liz.
What do you think your biggest takeaway from the programme has been?
Again, probably the thing I mentioned earlier on about the productivity side of things was probably my biggest takeaway about just being able to work through all the different factors during that session and sort of rate them and probably acknowledge, yeah, okay, just how effective that is. And it was the same with the influence session, really, those two particularly. And I think that I said a second ago about the overall takeaway of that sort of confidence with coaching. I think otherwise, then what goes along with that is that, I guess, that understanding and that belief really in being able to work with others and empower others and just how the bigger impact that can have really.
Absolutely. And I think, we forget the ripple effects that the personal development that we have can have, especially as a leader, can have on the rest of our team. So who would you recommend this programme to? What would you say to others? What should they know about working with me?
Yeah, I think where I started from, then as I said, I had a sort of broad or basic understanding of coaching, and therefore felt that this was the logical next step. But I'd say that whether that's the case or not, whether it's your first sort of exposure to coaching or whether it's something you've done before, I'd say equally that the high performance coaching, the 12 weeks, the 12 sessions, generally felt to me like each one was something that I could take away and something that I could either implement here at school or I could use with myself really. And I think that's probably the key for me.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And it has been one amazing journey. So thank you so much, Matt.
No problem.